It'll be nice. Kids do that.
Hello, everyone. We're going to begin our meeting. And first is our Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have taken our roll, and we do have a quorum, so we can begin. Our first agenda item is, let's see, the approval of the minutes. We have June 19 business meeting, closed meeting, and June 26th closed meeting. Do we have any discussion? Any changes? Would someone like to?
I move to adopt the minutes as presented for the June 19th, 2017 business meeting, the June 19th, 2017 closed meeting, and the June 26th, 2017 closed meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Don Runner.
Aye.
Rick Cavanato.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller.
Aye.
Dan Nicholas.
Aye.
And Terry Papasich.
I'm going to abstain because I was not here for the June 19 meeting, so.
Thank you.
Okay. And that brings us to our first reception of visitors. This is for anyone to comment on the agenda items. And there's a description there, and I'm not going to go into it unless we need to. Okay? All right. There is none, so we will move on to our reports by the superintendent. The end of the year financial report, and that's probably Mark Stalen.
It sure is. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay.
Right over to you.
So I'd like to spend about an hour. There's 3 exhibits. I'd like to spend about
But we're going to give them
an hour on each exhibit because it's good news, and when it's good news, I like to talk about it for a long time. If it's bad news, I usually gloss over it. You know how I usually do that. Actually, no, I hope you've had a chance to read the memo. It is pretty good news. It's the budget we developed for this year gave us a pretty good profile for how we develop next year's budget. That's really what these quarterly reports are. I stated at the beginning of each one that these are budget monitoring, and we want to know how good we are at predicting and trying to guess what our overall costs will be, and really on a pretty much a district-wide basis. So there's a lot of movement that we do with funds during the course of the year or budget amounts during the year as things progress, and we find things that are more of a priority or a need than others, and so that we allow that flexibility of our administrators, particularly in the buildings with per pupil allocations where they might have different functions involved and different objects involved, because they may have needs that come up in the middle of the year that are more important, and that's what we want them to be able to make those decisions. But so I'm going to point out again that some of just 2 or 3 things on each exhibit. One is that it's a modified cash basis. It does include a receivable. We usually adjust for taxes. We always adjust for early taxes because we get those in June, and those are really deferred for the next fiscal year. So we take the June of 2017 taxes out, and we bring the June of 2016 taxes in, so we keep our levies intact for the purpose that they were intended to fund for those years. But also includes a $1.7 million receivable from the state. It's for mandated categoricals for the most part. There's a few other small grants involved there. And typically, the state has always made good on those. Now, I know this has been a crazy year, but the talk through all the business manager groups is that, everybody's booking them as a receivable, at least for budget monitoring. We knew what we were going to get from the state. We pretty much got it, although it's 1.7, it's a receivable. We got only 2 of the 4 quarterly payments. If they don't make good on that, we lose that, don't have the 1.7 in there. It's a different picture. Our budget down here shows that we had 2.47 million at the beginning of the year, 4 million at the end, and then you always look at the bottom, 1.559 excess revenues over expenditures and transfers out. So we budgeted 1.120. So we expected there, we made some big cuts last year. We made some tough decisions. But there was a couple positive things, and I'll cover that actually made us exceed the budget. And that includes, that 1.5 includes 1.7 receivable from the state. Now, it's possible that the state doesn't make any of it. It's possible, I don't think that'll happen. I think they'll make at least the third and probably a good portion, if not all of the fourth quarter payment. They may not do it within 60 days, so our CAFR may not be able to pick it up for governmental standards. But I do believe it's in the pipeline and it'll come, because that's what the consensus is of most of the business managers I've had discussion with. But if they don't get the 1.7, we'll have a $100,000 loss for this year, roughly. Would leave us with a 2.7 reserve. If you recall the beginning, or where we ended up last year, at the bottom here is 2.9 for our ending reserve. That's what we started the year, 2.9 reserve level. When we drop below 3%, I'm required to bring to you a plan to get back above 3%, and that's why we decided to make the cuts last year. And if all comes true, like we're hoping right now, it'll be a 4.6, so it'll be a very successful year. Really, that's the big picture on the fund balances. If we look at the revenue collected exhibit, taxes are still coming in at 100%, which is typical for us. It's good for us. We are in a fantastic community that even though there's appeals, we work very closely with the assessors to avoid a tax loss from an appeal. We try and get it, we think there's a likely loss on a property because it's miscalculated. We want them to make the adjustment before the taxes go out. And we work hard to find that out. We have a consortium. We partner with other schools, so we all kind of look at it together and know. And so we're happy that we have 100% collection. Some districts are in the 94 to 96% level collected or guessing at it. They don't know what they're going to get out of and lose in appeals, because appeals are usually approved after the taxes have gone out and set, and it's too late to reallocate the rate. So you just lose the money. You just pay it out of your payments. The big surprise really was replacement taxes. If you look at it, the second line down, it was $200,000 higher than budget and $100,000 more than we collected last year, in spite of the fact that they told us that they had overpaid us by $120,000. Not us, but they overpaid every governmental entity that collects replacement taxes because they miscalculated the amount of funds that they had to pay out. I don't know how they paid them out without having it, but they figured a way to do that, and told us that we were going to lose $120,000. So we budgeted it down, and now what could very well have happened, this could be that they did take they were going to do it over 2 years, so we expected maybe 60,000 or so, up to 120 to hit us in the first year. It could be that just the collections from replacement taxes, because these are based on income statements that corporations pay taxes on, right? So it means that the replacement taxes that they had to fund, unless they made the same miscalculation this year.
That's what I would want.
Yeah, so maybe they'll tell us we owe them $240,000 and they're going to take it over 4 years. I don't know how that's going to work, but this tells me that, because I've talked to other districts, they are seeing the same thing. So everybody, the replacement taxes are up, which just means that the Illinois economy in corporate, at least for corporations, is coming back somewhat. Everything else really is in kind of normal variations. There's not a whole lot there, other than we already talked about the general state aid. It actually is less than we collected, but I think part of it is just our enrollment numbers are down a little bit, and some of that is based on claims that we make at the very end of the year for transportation and things like that impact what we get. But this is the scenario if we collect the 1.7. I think the last exhibit really is just expenditures. No big surprises here at all. The salaries and benefits are in line with our numbers. We're right there. Purchase services is the one item that I got to take it hard here. So I was trying to reduce one route at each school, just because our kid counts per bus are low, and I was trying to get them to economize. And they did some head counts for us, but we really didn't get them until late October. And then the decision was, well, let's make some changes after December. And when they were starting to implement it, they needed one more bus at South instead of taking one away. So instead of losing 2 buses, we stayed the same with one bus coming off of North and one bus being added at South. And I think it was, I think we have a new director there, and we've already had a conversation that I want to do this earlier, and I still think, based on our headcounts, we can do better with our routing. And it is complicated because we have our feeders, and if we take a bus out, they still might need that bus to run a feeder route. So there's no real big incentive for them to pull buses out. But I'm gonna start with them a little earlier and see if we can't do it, because I think our average bus is about 30 to 31 kids. Our target is in like 39 to 40, and with a maximum of 45. And so we're trying to, I want to get higher closer to our target, so. But there's a ripple effect. It does mess up some of the routing for the feeders, because they still need the same number of buses. So we all have to work together, and it's a little bit of a connected thing. But that kind of kept our transportation costs from dropping like I was hoping, and it kept them up higher. So that was the one area in purchase services where I think we need to change our projection for it this year, and we'll probably put more in the budget for that. But it's a good basis, and wrapping it up for the 2017-18 budget. We will expect to provide the tentative budget at the August 7th workshop meeting. And we appreciate you adding it that way, because we need to have 30 days between that and the final approval of the budget. And our September meeting is on the 18th, and so if we waited until the 21st of August to put the tentative out, we would have not made it in, would have had to have a special meeting in September. So it's unusual, but we're bringing it to the workshop on August 7th as an action item to approve the tentative budget. So unless you have questions, that's all I have.
All right.
I wanted to point out, you can see it in last fiscal year too, and you wrote about this in your memo. The fact that at the end of the year, you see, was like 0.14% or something like that variance in
The budget?
budget versus what actually happened, and the efforts that you make during the year to monitor what's going on and make adjustments as you go, so that number can be, because it's, that number can be so close like that, right? I mean, that's.
Well, there's a lot of administrators that do that.
Right.
I'm part of it.
When I say you,
Their stuff.
it was metaphorical. The point,
Yeah.
the point is that
Does a good job.
there's great effort put into trying to estimate this correctly, and then there's monitoring that goes on during the year and adjustments that get made so that when we get to the end, this works out. So I think the staff should be commended for that good work.
Thanks.
So thank you.
When it comes to state money and replacement taxes, there are dartboards that are involved. Just
Yeah.
wanna let you know. Just a little bit of that on the revenue side.
Yeah.
Mark, for next year, are you going to be targeting a reserve of, trying to maintain that 4.6%?
I think right now, we've always tried to just roll on a balanced budget. There's, and balancing, tying our expenditures to the revenue stream, because there's a trade-off. If you try to build your budget up, that means you're going to provide less services somewhere. And when you're only getting inflationary increases, and very possibly, we won't get any new state aid, because they did pass the evidence-based model.
Yeah.
We probably won't get much of anything in terms of new state money. We're hoping we collect what we have, they actually hold us harmless and actually pay us what they have in the pipeline, or supposed to have in the pipeline. So it would be to hold and stay the course. Hank and I have talked about very possibly putting into this budget a possible debt issuance for reinstating a working cash budget. We can do that. I'd like to put that up as long as possible because of the timing of it. That's not an impact to our taxpayers. It just keeps using a debt service base that we have, which extends it out a little bit longer. So that's one big safety net if something goes south on us. But if we decide we want to build up our fund balances, it's going to hurt something in the programs. And we made some cuts last year that were not only just not popular, they were hard to do. They were very difficult cuts to make. And we're at a point where there's a lot of things that we'd love to put into the budget.
Right.
So we're trying to cut some costs internally, but not to reduce or build our reserve up, but really just to add more services back or add new services that we think would help.
So the answer is you'd stay the
So
course.
stay the course. I'm happy
Stay the
at
course,
4.
but, yeah, I mean, my question is, policy is 3%. We shot up to 4.6% from below 3%. What's your target?
You know, it really is, depends on where we are with everything, with the whole big picture. And the whole big picture, again, is we're not seeing any new state money, we're not
Yeah.
seeing any new funding sources. We would have to look at things like where our employees are in terms of how close to retirement and replacement, and some of those internal mechanisms that yield opportunities to us, you know, replacing older administrators
Older
with
administrator.
younger ones, you know. Yeah. Not really the case, but you know, it was just, that was just an
Pete
example.
holding a mirror there, Mark?
So, I mean, those are the things that you try and if you're gonna go after reserve. I mean, a level for me would probably be 7% range would be a great, very, very safe level for us. Because there's very little with the amount of state money that we get, as long as our tax base is solid, there's very little that the state could do to us beyond 7%, you know, so that would give us a pretty good base. But I'd be happy to get there on a very slow basis, maybe $100,000 a year if everything else fits together like that. But another opportunity to do that would be, again, would be like if the master facility plan is implemented and we have a lot of new dollars for capital improvement coming from that source and that project, maybe we would be able to roll back some of the annual capital outlay for a couple of years and build it back up. I mean, those are the things you have to just hit with what's coming at you that year. So, but right now, I mean, I'm so tentative, I think revenue's so tentative right now, I wouldn't want to build it up too high, and, because I'm thinking we would cut into program. And I think we can survive with 4.6. I think we can actually survive. Honestly, we can operate the district with 0 fund balance if we had to, because we always get the June payment of taxes. We will have cash flow. We may not have reserve, but we will have cash flow to operate the district. But 3% keeps us out of having to do anything.
I don't think we could, I would not,
Yeah.
operating, I
I'm
wish
just
you
saying-
hadn't said that, because
I'm just
I
saying
really
in an
don't think
emergency, we can operate with 0.
Well, because we're awesome at what we do, and necessity is the mother of invention, and you find a way, but the reality
Yeah,
is
to do that,
that's-
we'd be living
that's
off the next year's taxes, which some districts use
Right.
the whole levy, we would have to use a part.
That's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And then also just to emphasize, that right now that 4.6 is on paper, and until I see that 1.7 from the state.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
it could be 2.3 or so
Right.
if we don't get to.
So this is a great position to be in, I think, for now. You know, we've protected ourselves.
Well, and remember, a lot of, you know, the 3% kicks in, and that the board chose to take action that, you
Yep.
know, obviously wasn't popular, but if things would have gone the wrong direction with the state this year,
Yeah,
those end-of-the-year numbers would have looked much different.
Right.
And especially without the cuts and proactive measures that
Yeah.
everybody worked so hard at in advance of this, then, you know, that money disappears really quickly. So the district, you know, collectively, that's teachers, that's administrators, that's everybody, put us in shape where we could have weathered the storm if it went differently this year. So hopefully we're not put in that position again.
right.
On the pension shift legislation,
I was going to bring that up.
have you started to run any projections on
Oh,
the impact?
nothing new. I mean, it only grows by our level our pension, TRS payroll goes up. I mean, it's still close to $3 million of liability we'd have there if they shifted that to us, but that's the same thing as them cutting our state aid. So, I mean, it's either take it from the revenue or you push it on the expense side. The feeling right now is that it would be very slow integration if they were to do that at all. It wouldn't be a shift in 1 year, it would be a shift over multiple years, but I don't know, unless there's more talk about it. I haven't heard anybody talking about it like, I know that's the one hang up with the current budget is that Chicago, Republicans don't want Chicago to get $215 million new money. They want it to be spread differently, and that's the sticking point in it right now, and it could lead to something, but, and I didn't do any new calculations on it. That would be, something we'd have to react to, obviously. That might mean that we would issue those bonds, build up the working cash.
I was under the impression that, I thought it was Senate Bill 40, that there was pension shift legislation that already passed.
It was only for salaries, $180,000.
Over 180,000.
Over 180,
Yeah,
so it had very little impact on us?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that'll be worked into next year's budget, but,
Okay.
right, it was, 180,000
Okay,
salary.
all right.
But that many of us believe is the beginning.
Yes,
That
that's how I
over-
saw it.
Every year, they just lower that
That's it.
that amount
Yes.
until it's zero.
Yeah.
And that's how they'll work in the
That's
shift.
how I read it.
But
Could be.
everybody's impression is that will be feathered in over 7 to 12 years.
And we have a right to reopen our CBA if that does change?
We have the right to request that we go to the table and discuss it.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, just to negotiate it, but it's not binding on either side.
okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We will go to the booster organization's pay rental fees. Is that you, Dr.
This
Thiele?
this is me, although I might have my cast of thousands weigh in and help me on this one.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
What I'd like to start with is policy 8.20, which talks about how we use the facilities and then charge back our costs or more, depending on what the organization is in their relationship to us in the community. The key part in this is pretty much that if you get down to the end of the third, I guess, paragraph, since the second paragraph is one sentence. A fee schedule and other terms of use shall be prepared by the superintendent and subject to annual approval by the school board. So I want to get this in front of the board and just take a look at the fee schedule, which we're not recommending changing at this point. But we do have one little sticky wicket in the whole thing, which is how this has been applied historically to groups that are related to the school but are not the school. And that one group that's been treated differently consistently is the Ed Foundation. The Ed Foundation has not been charged back any costs for any events that they've run at the school. Other organizations like the marching band or the wrestling team or you pick the fundraising event or organization is charged back the custodial costs and security costs associated with running their events. I believe that's just been decided, I don't know by who in the past. Ultimately, the superintendent has the right to waive those costs. But it has gotten on the radar of some of the different fundraising groups across the district that it's not treated equally across the board. But due to the close relationship between the foundation and the school board and all of that, I didn't want to unilaterally make a change before having a discussion with the board to see if you want to discuss it in policy, if you wanted me to do it differently, where you wanted to go from here with it. Before we go into that, I just want to pull up the fee schedule so you can kind of see what we're talking about here. Okay. So what we're really talking about is the B local community groups, not for profit. And these are the rates that we would charge back then for opening our buildings and running events. Whether you're a nonprofit in the community or you're one of our organizations internally, athletic boosters, somebody that's running an event, and then we have to staff it, clean up after it, open the building up, all of those things that go along with it. So I kind of want to get the take of the board of
Just to be clear, we
Yeah.
don't charge anything in the facility, it's only out of pocket. And that's
only
what
out of
the-
pocket, yeah.
And some of the events get pretty intense, and they do involve a lot of overtime of staff. Some like the overtime, some don't, some are assigned to do it. But it really comes from the theory of, you know, if it's gonna cost the district $5,000 for one particular group to put something on, it's really taking money out of the ed fund and putting it in that booster's hands, right? And if the money doesn't come back to the district, at what point do you stop reallocating dollars out to different groups? And so we did, when we put this together, just think through, okay, let's just, no facility fee, that's for outside groups, that's not really our people, but to put a little bit of a limit on.
Tony, and you'll see what, this is the actual, what we're talking about,
Yeah.
is the personnel costs per hour.
And those are based on total FICA, IMRF, fall costs, and insurance, and hourly costs.
Are those per hour fees?
Yeah,
They are,
yeah.
okay.
So I have a question, because I hadn't asked about this. So when we're talking about the fees, we're talking about an outside organization come in and want to use the school for an after-hours, non-school event. And I think you're saying, you're talking about are you talking about the foundation?
The Education Foundation,
okay,
or if you're
okay.
one of our,
Athletic
Any one of our
boosters, there's a
athletic
big,
boosters.
big event at North.
we don't charge for the facilities
Musical
costs, but we
sound.
do charge the personnel costs.
Okay.
So the bottom two.
Anything we pay out of pocket, we
Are
charge.
there any educational groups? So booster clubs, athletics, marching band, extracurricular things. Are there any other educational groups that are raising money to go directly to the students for educational purposes? Other than the foundation, is there any other group like that that this would apply to?
We say for educational purposes.
So what I'm trying to draw a distinction, because I see the Education Foundation raising money and then granting that money back to the students, through the teachers, for educational purposes to supplement existing curriculum, whereas a booster club, or is
That's a good distinction.
raising money to do something extracurricular, something above and beyond, but not necessarily vital to the curriculum. And I think that there's a distinction there.
Yeah, so the foundation is fundraising, basically, right, for the education, so yeah. And then
I do, I see the distinction of the foundation itself, because the money comes back to the total district in a different way. Now, may be in different pockets, but at least it's, every student or every group in the district is typically shared in the opportunity to
Right,
apply for something.
because it comes back for
As
a
opposed
school
to
day, yeah.
the North Athletic Boosters, that's going to stay with North Athletics. The music bowl is going
Right.
to stay in
Correct.
Fine Arts. So it's different from a separate,
Sure.
So I think it exists in kind of its own sort of
Category.
category
Yeah.
here, and because I don't think, I would be against charging them personnel costs related to, say, Pizza Wars event or something like
Right.
that. And I just don't see it as being
Really
the same
the only thing
thing.
to use it for.
I see where a group might say, hey, listen, we're doing a nonprofit thing too to benefit the students as well, but, and if somebody if there was a group out there that was doing something similar to what the Education Foundation is doing, then I would say, hey, then maybe we ought to treat them the same way. But
Where
I
they're
don't believe
hitting
that
all
exists.
students.
Yes.
See, all students are being
And it's-
helped by
And
that.
it's educational, and it's an extension of
And
existing.
it's for the school day.
Existing curriculum, to supplement existing curriculum.
Right.
Versus helping to supplement and offset costs for something extra
Like a
that we
trip
really
or
don't.
something.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I love our fine arts, I love our athletics, I love these things, and I love these opportunities that we have for the students, but those are not core things that we owe the students.
Well,
We-
and I kind of see this, like, if you're going to sell candy, you've got to buy the candy to sell it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I mean, so to me, if you're going to host an event, there's upfront costs to hosting that event as well. I just wanted to make sure that, that the board was aware that this difference existed and that the board was comfortable with this difference between.
Are we going to somebody's going to object to this? Or
No, but I want to make sure that as a new superintendent, First of all, it says we need to review this yearly with the board, so I want to get the fee schedule in front of you and just talk through it. But I also want to make sure the current practices that we were doing were still in line with what the vision for the board was.
I have a question. How much free services is the foundation receiving on a yearly basis, ballpark?
The biggest event is really Pizza Wars.
It's really the only
The
event.
thing I know of, other than, we had a cubicle for a while, but, so no real cost,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we have our
Just Pizza
monthly,
Wars.
So
the monthly meetings
it
here.
really is only
Yeah, they have meetings
one, it's
there.
not like they're holding an event
Meeting.
every week in the field house for 6 hours a day.
Right.
You know, it's one time a year, right?
This is just kind of a gut check, just to make sure.
So,
I'm still
can
okay
I
with the
pick-
policy.
Well, I do want to, I mean, there is one group that, and it's, we think it's all worked out, so I would just, Music Bowl at South is, takes a lot of setup on a Friday night, and usually 16 hours of 1 or 2 employees during the event. They use the ASC, they use the stadium, and we told them last year, we started, it was really a good job by Michelle Cannon again, who looked at it and said, why are they different? Why is this one group standing out from the rest? And we couldn't, so we talked to them and they understood, and apparently said, at least they said they understood that. So they have about, we think it's gonna be somewhere $3,000 or $4,000 worth of expenses that they incur in personnel, and I think they're fine with it. So if they come, it'd be a surprise to me. We think it's all worked out.
Well, I've offered my rationale. I think there's a
Yeah.
distinction here. I do. So,
My question was, how much are we losing if we said any organization that directly benefits our students, we're not going to charge, period?
Well, what do you mean by directly
Yeah,
benefit?
that's
'cause
open-ended.
We could work through that.
Music Bowl definitely benefits our students. The
Yeah.
wrestling team fundraiser
Yes.
definitely benefits our
Yes,
students.
when I first blush, my opinion would be, don't charge them. They're benefiting our students.
It would be
But I-
real hard because
I'd
there's
like
some
to know
groups
how much we're
that mix-
losing out on that.
Well, we'd have to really look at that, because there's some groups that come in, let's use swim teams that come in.
Yeah.
Half of the kids are our students, half of them are not our students. Where do you draw a line with a group that comes in, it's a mixed group?
Well, using our facilities not to raise money or funds for our students
So you
is a
mean just on
different thing.
fundraisers?
As a
Yeah.
fundraiser.
Yeah.
Fundraisers,
Did I
like,
misunderstand that it still, Hank still have the opportunity to
Waive.
determine? Right, so I think we leave it.
But do you want to put our superintendent in that situation where he has to pick and choose between organizations and,
Prefer not
find
to.
himself having
That's why
enemies in the
we-
community?
right, yeah, well,
Foundation before you-
I can see both sides.
Yeah, I mean,
So that-
I think
so-
if somebody's raising money for our students, boy, I just, in my opinion, why are we saying it's okay for the foundation and not other organizations?
well, I offered my rationale.
I know.
I agree.
I'm trying to give my opinion.
Okay.
And I don't see the
In
difference.
some cases, though, I mean, the basis for that was that the cost of the district to do it was at or very close to what they were generating. So in that case, we'd rather just cut them a check
Yeah.
and not have them, have to have people
That's
work
right.
overtime.
Work
So-
the overtime.
So that it's,
Doesn't make sense
there's
to
some
do
gray
it.
lines in there that, the cheerleading actually probably made a lot of money. They were making $10,000 to $20,000 when they would do a large regional here. And there's a lot of work and a lot of people, and we got into thousands of dollars of cost. I mean, if it's one supervisor or something, yes, but then when you
What about
have 500 people here that need to be supervised,
Right.
and you have them going through the halls, you need supervision back there.
I mean, what about a policy that says any of those organizations who want to do a fundraising, they can do one event per year? Or something of that nature. And I hear what you guys are saying, and I hear, if we change the policy and just said anyone who raises money for our students can come in and use our facilities for free of charge, we may have some abuse. But I don't, I sit on the foundation, and I'm thankful, very thankful that the school doesn't charge us for Pizza Wars. But I don't see the distinction that you guys are making, that somehow what the foundation does is totally different than what, these other fine organizations do for our students. Because musical education Athletics are just as important, in my opinion, as, supplementing curricula, which is what the foundation does. It's just supplementing student experiences in a different fashion.
But see, some of the okay, I won't, go ahead.
But aren't we speaking about the personnel cost per hour is the
Yeah.
big piece of it?
Yeah.
And then I guess I would want to see what the sample pool looks like. Are we getting tons of people that are coming and asking for, to use our facilities? What's the, because technically I don't think we're making money. We're kind of paying our expense associated
We're
with
just trying to,
them.
not lose any money.
Yeah, so
With fundraisers, yeah.
yeah, so we're not gating, and we're not trying
Right.
to pay
So
the cost.
it's outside and for-profit groups we do actually, but not
Okay.
boosters or not anybody that's in alignment, we call that in alignment with our mission. If they're in line with our school mission,
Sure.
we just charge out of pocket right now.
Yeah, I'd like to see what that number is. I'm with you, Don. I mean, it's, not saying we should obviously keep going pizza covering that, the Education Foundation, but I don't see a big distinction between that and the wrestling team or the band or anything else.
Wow, okay.
I mean, but I don't know if it's
We can pull
$100 or $100,000. I just
Yeah.
don't know the size.
I think the difference is, we don't have to have a wrestling team, we have to have PE, though. The money the Education Foundation raises is going to supplement existing curriculum
For all students.
for all students,
All students.
whereas these other funds are being raised for a particular group to do
Yes.
something extracurricular. I think are also that they're fine organizations, and my children
Not
are
making
deeply
money.
involved.
We're just
in
covering
these
the
other
cost.
things. Sorry.
Okay, we're not
Making money.
But I like the point that Mark made, by keeping this personnel cost in play, it forces the group to do some economic study on whether or not this makes sense to do. They have to look at how much money are they gonna raise, and what's the cost of raising that money, and does it make sense? If you take this away, that goes away, and now, if who cares? If we raise $300, that's great. Who cares that it actually costs a
But
district?
it costs the school district $500.
Whatever, yeah.
To staff that event that only made $300.
I think that's, and I certainly think that has to be looked at with the Education Foundation as well. But there we have a very close relationship, and with that particular group being somewhat different than these other things, I think it's possible to continue on the way we're going. It's not broke. I don't think it needs to be fixed. There isn't any uproar of it. There's no this is a whole lot of discussion here, probably.
Mark,
about
these are
something-
fair costs, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
these are very fair costs,
These
right?
are-
You put all the pieces.
Well in
Pretty
line.
much our actual
They're
costs.
overtime. Most of them, they're overtime.
Yeah.
Because we don't have, so you have to take it at an overtime rate.
I think it's more of a
Lifeguards and
symbolic
that's not.
gesture than anything, I guess, is what I'm.
So how about I follow up? We'll do a little bit of
Little bit of
research.
research.
I'll provide the board a little more information about what kind of dollars we're looking at per year. For now, is everybody comfortable with, we've progressed as we have been? And then we can decide if it wants to come back at a future meeting or policy or at some other level in the future.
I do have one other question, if I could. If you could scroll back up. When you're talking about the cost per hour for the space cost,
Yes.
completely fine with that. My question is, what are our liability insurance requirements of groups, outside groups?
In fact, we turned one down today because they couldn't get insurance. Every group that comes in has to have a certificate of insurance, holding us harmless and naming us as additional insurance.
Is that something, unless I misread it, is that something we need to add to the policy? That the groups coming in need to have that insurance at a certain level?
Potentially share that. I know for things I've done with nonprofits, you tell them what that insurance needs to look like in order to use the
Right,
facility.
you give them an example of
I just wondered, does it need to be in the policy?
Is it enough to have it in an administrative procedure, or should it actually be written into our policy is what's being asked?
Yeah, I think that's what, should we have wording in the policy stating that?
It's in the procedure and it's in what we do. It's online as well. But
Do you want to, we can send this one back to policy, we can compare it to
Yeah.
press and make
the
sure.
thing that'll
that-
be, I do think there's some sometimes like the music bowl, we will include, because there's different groups that come in, and there's different levels of liability when, we don't, our groups and our boosters are covered by our insurance policy. So if the cheerleaders have a regional competition at our facility, it's covered under our policy.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about outside groups.
Yeah, outside groups always,
Even
group from
B.
Purdue.
Have to
today
have
got-
proof of
B is
insurance.
an outside group.
Well, it does say under, Tony, can you flip back to the policy? Under 2, it says, when such use does not, 2, affect the property or liability of the school district. So that probably, that
Covers that,
language
yeah.
does ensure from the board that we have to make sure that we're not liable. Our liability doesn't change by bringing in that
It's-
group.
As long as it's in the procedural steps, then it's fine.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
All right,
And
I'm
any
good.
other, you know what,
We know
next
what-
steps will be.
Next steps will be, thank you.
okay. And now we're going to get an update on our minority recruitment from, I believe, Pete?
Yep, and I'll remind everybody, this has been a longstanding board goal.
Yes.
And so with that, some of this is a little bit of a review. Some of this is, kind of new information. As the board may recall, the district has had a diversity committee for a number of years. Making sure this is working for me here. 4 years ago, when we kind of reconvened the district diversity committee that had started to become kind of dormant, one of the main purposes or the goal of the committee was to look at the recruiting and hiring of minority staff members, as well then as the retention of the staff members once they were hired by District 99. And that really had been the sole focus of that group for 3 years. And then as we moved into this school year, we continued to work in that area as well, but we kind of branched out a little bit. So just to kind of review for you, we have 16 folks that serve on the diversity committee. This is a combination of teachers and administrators from both campuses. And so, as I mentioned, we extended our purpose beyond just recruitment and retention of minority staff members. And it was part of the conversations that we had in the fall that helped spur the initiative to have our March 1st professional development session with all of our teachers. As well as our group reached out to various colleges and universities across the state. One of the things is we've had some conversations with various individuals involved in the education programs. We started to realize that not everybody really knew this was an initiative of District 99 and that we were interested in expanding our reach in terms of pool of candidates, et cetera. And so on February 14th, we hosted 17 representatives from 9 different colleges or universities. We shared with them our diversity initiative. We showed them the kind of diversity video that we have on the website that folks see when they're interested in applying to District 99. We kind of talked about, what our goals were. We offered to go to the various universities and meet with their education students, kind of put ourselves out there as a place that would be interested in hosting education department candidates for their observation hours as well as their student teaching experiences. On top of that, I was asked to present at 2 schools, North Central and Aurora. I actually was at both those campuses multiple times here this school year, and then Hank and I went and presented at Concordia University as well. Again, the idea of, trying to get out there, meet the various faculty representatives at the universities that are involved in helping to place students, getting our message out to the education students themselves. Some of the challenges in hiring diverse staff, there's been a large decline in students studying education in general, not just minority candidates, but just education in general. We've had difficulty in passing the TAP test. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Education has gotten beaten up by media and politicians across the state for a number of years. Economic salaries compared to those going into other fields, and then just the idea of promoting the importance of diversity in hiring decisions. And working with our administrative team, building principals, department chairs, everybody that plays a role in this. We've had people that have very much changed practices from where they were 5 years ago in this area. So just to kind of give you some numbers here, this graphic here comes from the Illinois Board of Higher Education. These are numbers of students enrolled in education programs in public universities in the state of Illinois. So you can see from 2005 to 2015, almost a 50% drop in the number of folks wanting to become teachers. And now this is all levels of teaching. So whereas we're looking only at 9 through 12, a good chunk of those 14,000 are going to be folks that are interested in only K through 8. So they're not even candidates for districts like ours. And then you can also see the low numbers of African American and Hispanic, our two largest minority groups, and kind of where their enrollment numbers were in education programs. Whoa.
That was a
Thank you very much.
I like that. I like that.
The bad news, you just fluffed right through.
And then here's another way of looking at this. This is the 2016 graduates of the public universities in Illinois. And the bottom line here is that there were roughly 200 minority candidates graduating for the entire state to try to hire. So, I mean, just the numbers are extremely low. A couple of things that we believe have had a huge impact on this. Whereas once all teacher candidates took the basic skills test, that was replaced by TAP in 2010. The cutoff scores were raised in 2012, and you can see the statistics here in terms of passing rate for those taking the test.
That kind of statistics is what we would typically call a racially biased exam. And many of us leaders in education are calling this exactly that. When you start to see that discrepancy, there's something in there that doesn't look legitimate when you see those kinds of scores.
Are they looking to change that?
There's a lot of
Test
pressure.
right now?
There's a lot of pressure to do that.
There is, and there are some things that have been done, so.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That's a great segue for us here. So looking at then in 2015 overall for all education students attempting to pass TAP, 21%, this is on a first attempt. So some of the failing folks, the non-21%, would retake the test and later pass.
Okay.
But still, on first blush, 21% are passing the test. In somebody's statistical analysis, they determined that passing this TAP was comparable to getting a 26 on the ACT across all areas. So,
Wow.
you know how when we look at composite scores, you might have like a 22 in one area and an 18 in another, and it gives you a 20. You have to have a 26 in all areas or you fail.
Which isn't even like our composite scores for our high schools.
Or the
North
state.
South.
Or, yeah.
So,
Correct. So just to give you a sense of how difficult that was made. And again, low percentage passing rates. And in their initial setting of this in 2012, folks were limited to 5 attempts. And if you couldn't pass in 5, you were barred for life from,
Taking it.
trying to become a teacher in the state of Illinois. So it's not shocking then when you see these kinds of things, when you think back to that slide earlier where it talks about 25,000 folks in education programs in 2005, 10 years later it's down to 14,000. This is contributing to some of those drops. Thankfully, they are now starting to allow ACT and SAT to be substituted for TAP. And so there are some, I'm not going to go through all the language with you, but just wanted to give you the sense that this should start to improve over time. The question is really how much damage has already been done. And we're going to have to, I think, as a state, do a lot of work here now to find ways to incentivize folks to go back into education. You know, we don't have money right now, obviously, in the state, but, you know, to get a reversal in the numbers that we've seen, something's going to happen, I believe, and just my own personal opinion, in order to stem the damage that's been done and start getting things moving back in a positive direction. So
Pete, when do they take this TAP test? Is this
after they're in the university and they've declared that they want to be an education major, you have to then pass the test in order to be able to continue. So this isn't even where all freshmen at the college level take the TAP test. And if you happen to want to go into education, the score really counts for you, and for everybody else, they can just ignore it. These are folks who said, I want to become a teacher. They apply and are accepted into the education programs. They may take the introductory coursework, but by like sophomore year, you're going to end up having to pass the TAP before you can continue on.
And who made up this TAP test? Is it other educators, or is it?
No, they farmed this out to somebody to put together, but this was largely an ISBE thing that didn't get a lot of input from a lot of other folks until it was
Done.
But it's done now, right? We're on the
Yes,
ACT.
now
so
we're
it's-
able to do other things
what's
in
done is
addition
done.
to the TAP, yes. So that's just to give you a sense of where we are.
Oh, no, then this may be getting in the weeds. I was just gonna say, are there preparatory classes like an ACT or SAT for TAP?
Yes, there are, and education programs have really started to put together review sessions and things like that once they started to see the horrific numbers that we were getting. So, yes, they have put
But-
supports in place to help.
And there's plenty of supports for ACT and SAT,
Absolutely.
and that's what they're going to be taking now.
Potentially, yes.
Potentially, or no?
Well, I mean,
thought you said
they have an option.
Oh, they have an option to
They
that.
could still take the TAP, or you could use an ACT, SAT
Well, I don't know,
test.
I gotta believe that you'd have to.
Yes.
If you're taking the TAP and not passing, I'm thinking maybe you shouldn't be, I mean,
Right.
you know, when the data there is saying, hey, but, you know, ACT is the better way to go here,
Correct.
why wouldn't you do that, right?
I agree.
So, I have to ask a question. Should we be looking in Wisconsin and Indiana, and, I mean, why are we only looking in Illinois?
Well, we haven't only been looking in Illinois. Until this year, for the last 3 years, I've attended the University of Wisconsin Job Fair, the University of Iowa Job Fair, the University of Missouri Job Fair, Grand Valley State University Job. I mean, I was in each of those states. The other thing that we did, though, at the state legislative level, is we made it very difficult for folks who are getting educator license out of state to get a state license
reciprocity.
in Illinois. They did away with all the
Yeah,
reciprocity.
there's not. So you
And
gotta-
Come
so
on.
they very much, but because the goal here was, I think,
To keep people in
we
Illinois.
wanted the candidates to come out of Illinois universities to improve education in the state of Illinois.
I love the idea of attracting people from out of state to Illinois.
They can't get the license.
Yeah, I mean, we were,
That's too bad.
I'm at job fairs talking to folks who are from Illinois
Yeah,
that are at an out-of-state university who are telling me,
amazing, right?
I can't come back to Illinois to teach. There's too many hoops to jump through. They've made it too difficult for me to come back to Illinois.
Very interesting.
Wow.
So, you know,
And it just continues.
yeah, it does.
Whatever.
So, you know, we haven't completely just given up. So we attended 11 different job fairs this year across the state. And then I also had about a half day where I had taken part in a virtual job fair where folks we were on, you know, kind of like through the internet. And I was able to contact 43 different diverse candidates and invite them to apply to District 99. Unfortunately, nothing came of that, but it was an opportunity for us to reach out to various individuals.
Related question. Students from District 99 who have already suggested that they want to go to college to be a teacher, are we counseling them that they need to stay in the state of Illinois if they want to come back here? Is that happening? Because that's,
That's a good question, Mike. I'm not certain how much of that we do.
that would seem to me be a pretty important thing to know.
I don't want to put one of our intro to teaching teachers on the spot who happens
Val, what do we
I'm
do?
going to speak.
sitting in the audience right now,
What
but
I will say is our 15 to 25 students who enroll in Intro to Teaching are versed on this. Unfortunately, the vast majority of those students are seniors by the time they enter the course, many of whom early on have committed, to a college or university perhaps before they have gotten that information. But that small group does have that information, but there are a lot of students, as we've learned, that go into education either, without taking Intro to Teaching or decide later to go into education, that I would hope at the university level that their advisor is telling them that information, but I can't say for sure. But our 15 to 25 per campus definitely hear that message from us.
My thought is that and I think like Indiana with states offering the reciprocity of that, it's getting, some of the schools I'm looking at are cheaper than Illinois schools. So I'm thinking this could potentially become a concern because these kids may be opting out with other states, surrounding states being friendly to us as far as from a tuition standpoint, so.
Right, but there's a cost, right? So the cost is that if your dream is to come back to Downers Grove or Woodridge or Westmont or whatever, you're by going somewhere else, you're really making it very, very difficult for you to be able to come back. And if you don't know that leaving,
Provided
So-
that you know that.
right? So that's why it seems like that would be something that that our counselors would, as they're talking to the students and talking about career choices as they're moving through, that anybody who says I'm thinking about teaching, that's something our counselors ought to be sharing with those students so that they know that, because, hey, I mean, it's one thing if you can save $2,000, $3,000 a year in tuition going out of state. However, the cost is for saving that 10 grand. You're committing yourself to not being here anymore.
Then again, with what's been going on with education in the state of Illinois,
Change.
it doesn't look very appealing for a lot of people to come back and teach here.
Yes.
So
I get it, but
Illinois just continues to pile on the landslide of driving educators out of the
but
state.
are you disagreeing with my my point that we ought to be sharing that information?
No, I think we will, yeah, and we'll make sure our college and career
We could do
counselors
that.
are aware of it. Sure.
absolutely. And we have multiple counselors who are on
They
the
may already
diversity
be aware of it and
committee.
sharing it, I just haven't asked the question.
This is news to me tonight, and I have at least one child that I'm thinking, boy, I think maybe this might be the direction for her to go. So, I mean, now I can share that with her.
Sure.
I think it's a bad awakening.
Well, and we are providing legislative pressure to change a lot of these
Yes.
things from the,
Excellent. Yeah,
administrative sides, but,
So is the Illinois Education Association.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
from
Well-
all directions.
Yeah, HR folks, IPA,
Yeah.
IEA, everybody.
Got it. We just keep shooting ourselves in the foot.
We're good
in
at
this
that in
state.
Illinois.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you, sorry.
Sure. So then coming out of the job fairs, every year I put together a spreadsheet. So this is just half of this year's spreadsheet, but just to kind of give you an idea of how we track and look at all of this. These are the numbers of candidates we saw, and then trying to give us a little bit of numbers for various diverse groups. The summary of that is for this current spring, at the 11 job fairs that we went to, we saw 195 candidates in total. And then you can see again the minority candidates that we saw. So roughly 11.8% of the candidates that we saw ended up being diverse candidates.
Where are those diverse candidates going? Are they going to specific areas
On
versus
average,
ours?
typically within 20 miles of where they grew up. That's what the
That's
statistics
what the
tell us.
statistics tell us. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah.
So does that
it's,
mean we should be, I hate to say this, but targeting some of our students initially
We're starting to-
as juniors and seniors and
Yeah.
saying,
There you go.
hey,
Yeah, our intro to teaching program
how would
is
you like,
Those conversations.
having those conversations to kind of try to grow our own.
because I think that that's really a good way to go. And are we also, I'm not sure that this is the right thing to do, but helping them find scholarship money if they need that. You know, I mean, we help them, and then they feel,
Well, we're starting to talk as superintendents in DuPage County about working on setting up a program where any student, regardless of diversity or not, you want to, I mean, we're going to have a problem with just teachers.
Yeah.
Let alone diverse teachers. About, we've started talking towards the second half of last year, and this will continue through next year, about setting up programs where any student in DuPage County that goes out will be guaranteed a student teaching job and placement hours and observation hours back in a DuPage County school. So that, you know, maybe it's a District 88 kid that we then recruit, or District 88 gets one of our kids or whatever, but that in DuPage County, we know they want to move back close to home and teach.
Yeah.
So how can we cultivate that in our own county? Because it's likely that they're going to want to come back and teach.
That's smart.
I agree with that, because looking at the, I mean, we're talking about from a diversity standpoint, but looking at all the facts you guys have talked about tonight, this potentially could be a problem long-term, because in order to maintain good school systems and districts, we have to have good teachers and teachers,
Sure.
period. You know, so
And right now, if you go south of I-80, there are districts that cannot fill their teaching positions right now.
Wow.
They have building principals that are full-time science teachers because they can't hire a science teacher. Science, math, special ed, ELL are areas where there are positions that have been unfilled for 3-4 years. You know, and so eventually it probably could continue north of 80,
yeah.
given the numbers that we've seen, if we don't start to do some other things differently. And so, you know, the types of things that Hank's talking about, that the superintendent group is talking about, would be helpful to try to continue to get more folks to, you know, want to be teachers.
And this has been very helpful, because I thought potentially people just don't want to live in certain areas, but you enlightened me to a whole nother perspective that I didn't know existed.
So then one of the things that we do coming out of the job fair is basically any candidate that we see that's like a 4 or a 5, in kind of like a quick interview on a 1 to 5 scale, we put them on a spreadsheet by department. And then the department chairs, building administrators get access to the spreadsheet. So obviously these are our names of folks, not actual teacher people, so they're, you know,
I wondered.
we're protecting the innocent here.
For demonstration purposes only.
Yes.
I don't know.
Right, so,
Hi, that Pete Tice guy.
yeah, Chris Esposito's got a social studies opening, he can go, oh, it can't be Chris Esposito. Janae Demlow has a social studies opening, she can go to the spreadsheet and see, okay, here's 3 folks that were seen at a job fair that were viewed as strong enough candidates that I should probably at least take them through the initial screening in our hiring process. And then any of the highlighted cells, that would be a diverse candidate. So our DCs and building administrators know, here's somebody that we saw as a 4 or a 5 who's a diverse candidate. So, whoops, and so in the last 4 years, just to kind of give you the raw numbers, 3 teachers, 2 guidance counselors, 2 administrators, 1 dean, and 1 nurse have been hired here in District 99. So, you know, it's, the numbers are what the numbers, I mean, it's,
Right? I mean, it's not enough to get us a, you know, Pete and I went and met with several social studies classrooms this year that were looking at the diversity of our student body versus the diversity of our staff.
Right.
And the students' recommendation to us was to hire a staff that reflects the diversity of our student body. And then we brought them this kind of data, and they're like, whoa.
We're trying.
Statistically, that's very difficult to do. But, you know, we're ahead of the curve, but remember, we're competing against every other school district in this area that has the same goal, that's using a lot of the same strategies. So.
How are we doing in comparison to them? Are we, do we know? Do we know?
you know, I don't know for sure. I can tell you anecdotally, when we talk about it at NWPA, I've got some districts asking, what are you guys doing there in District 99? because they feel like our numbers are slightly higher than theirs, but I don't have true hard and fast numbers for
Because
you.
I just wondered if they're winning, let's say.
No, I don't know. Truly, I don't know.
I don't know, you know.
I also
I
think
would-
importantly, we're hiring good teachers, right? We're hiring teachers, we're good teachers, regardless of diverse or not diverse. Our hiring practices are good, our retention is good, we develop our teachers well. That's what's most important, right, is to get a good teacher. It's a bonus if they help us diversify our staff.
And so our purpose in this was, we want those good teachers, but we also would like our staff to be more reflective of our student body. And so how do you do that? Well, you have to cast a wider net. And so that's what this whole thing's been all about, is going places we haven't gone before and casting a wider net so that we increase our odds of finding that good teacher who also happens to be diverse in some way. And just increase our odds that way. So we've obviously had some success. I think the irony is, I'm just guessing here, but if we looked at our stats from 10 years ago, we might see that we're not doing as well as we did before, or it might be something similar. My guess is that we have to work this hard to get what we get, because the numbers are all working against us. The number of teachers that are just available of any kind. So many students, so few going into teaching. What a shame. And I don't know. I think right now it's probably a good bet that going into teaching be a good thing to do, because it's just going to get worse, and the demands. Everybody always looks at it in terms of the current environment and go, oh well, I don't want to deal with that. But the reality is, it's in another 4 or 5 years. I got to believe that teaching is probably going to be one of those things on a list of, here's a great career to go in,
For middle school.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyhow,
Well, it always goes like this, doesn't it?
It does.
thanks for the hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
All right. Criteria for student representation on the board. I'm going to ask, Janice is going to come up and pretend to be Jeannie here for a second, because Janice and Ed have been working throughout the second half of the school year to talk to other school districts that have students on the board and to come up with a process for doing this next year. I'm very happy with what they've put together. Just a reminder, I know we have a couple of new board members that weren't here when we discussed it. So the idea is that we had a student from each school at the board table that serves, as you see in the first bullet, an advisory non-voting member to the Board of Education, and they do not attend closed sessions. I will provide them information in advance of board meetings so that they can come prepared with stuff that would be appropriate to share with the student representatives. Their primary point of contact will be the principals in each of their schools. And I'm going to have Janice walk through kind of the selection procedures, and we'll take any questions that the board has after that. So.
Okay. So please excuse the cough drop, but it's the only way I'm going to get through the presentation. So Ed and I consulted with several other schools that have Board of Education representative a student on the Board of Education. And in particular, we looked at West Aurora, Batavia, and Lyons Township because they had a lot of really solid documents that were written out. We also talked with Leiden, whose process was a little bit more informal. And so looking at all of those and talking about the needs of District 99, we came up with the selection procedures that you see there. And you can see that for, we decided not to have like a GPA requirement because we really don't know that that's important. Obviously, we want our students to be in good academic standing, but there are so many other parts and characteristics that are important for this role that we didn't want to limit it to a particular GPA. And of course, with behavioral standing, we want them to be good students in following our rules and things like that. So just, following, of course, this student would be following like an activity code or an athletic code, just like our students who are involved in activities are. We did decide that they would fill out a candidate petition, and that would be just to get a signature of 50 students who would be enrolled in school during the time of their tenure. We thought that would mimic kind of what you guys have to do, and if they really are interested in a career in this down the line, that they should know what that's like.
Doesn't pay well.
It does not pay well, not at all. And so, the 50 students, we thought they can get that, and that would also see, can they talk to other students and, tell them why they want to be on it to get them to sign. 3 teacher signatures, 1 administrative signature, and then the student counselor. After we get the teacher signatures, the administrative signature, and the counselor signature, we will send a follow-up survey to those staff members to ask them to evaluate different aspects of that person's candidacy. We have not created that yet, but we would be looking at things like, do they listen to their classmates? Are they collaborative? How, do they think outside of the box? Those kinds of things. It would just be a simple rating scale, much like we do when we're rating for National Honor Society or when we're looking at candidates that we're looking to hire. So it would just be like on a scale of 1 to 7, 1 to 10, something like that. So that's basically what we're looking at. Then the students have to fill out an application. It will be on a Google form. I did include for you just because I figured it might be hard to get to the link. But so down below you see it's just very simple. We're asking them what kinds of activities they've been involved in school, but also what kinds of activities have they been involved in outside of school. Because, for example, they might be very heavily involved in scouting, which is a different kind of citizenship, right? And so that might be something that we would want to take a look at. And then they also have to write a 1-page typed summary of why they want to be a representative on the student school board, on the school board, and also what qualities they think they have, which will tell us a lot. Like if they understand what the role is, based on what they talk about. And then after we get the applications, then they'll go through an interview process. So just right now, I think at this point we're talking about they would be interviewing with the principals. We might. For this first year, it's hard because we don't have a current member, but in the future, we had talked about including like the outgoing student representative, as part of the interview process. This first time, we won't be able to do that. So we'll probably wait and see what kind of applications we get to determine exactly what the interview process will look like, whether Ed and I will do that together, because I think there is something to be said for picking representatives that represent different areas from the 2 schools. So we'll probably work very closely together on that. In the future, we would pick that person we would start the application process in early second semester so that we can go through the applications and the interviews and bring that person to the board by May. Obviously, this year we can't do that. So we'll be getting that information out to our seniors as soon as school starts, and hoping to bring the board members here by mid-September, end of September at the latest. So we'll be moving pretty quickly on this round. So that's basically our selection procedures right now.
In the other school districts, do the students don't serve in the summer? I would assume they don't attend any meetings when school is not in session.
Actually, I've not asked that, so I'd have to check to see. I don't know. I'm kind of expecting that they would.
Well, if they're graduated.
Oh, right. But no, but the juniors starting because they come to the May meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why we have them come to. The idea would be that in May they would both be here, just so that maybe one would be in the audience, kind of like you guys were doing when you were coming to the board meetings and you were watching, and then coming.
And it would be a 1-year term?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that would give an opportunity for other students to participate?
Right.
Cool.
Yes.
And now, would they report back to the student body if they wanted by maybe an article in their respective newspapers? Or?
So that's one of the things that we were talking about, what would be the next step be. So there's certainly several student organizations that we could ask them to go to their club meetings, like our student council, or for example, I have a student advisory council to the principal, inviting them to come, and talk to that group. So that would probably look a little bit different in each building, but somehow we want them not only reporting back to the students, but soliciting ideas from the students. So it might be that we decide that there's something something on that they have an email or something that students can email suggestions to, or, we'll have to start to work out the logistics of that. But we really want these students to be representing the whole student body and not just their group of friends.
Yes.
So we'll have to find ways for that to happen. And then we'll also ask them to meet with the principals and or the student activity directors before they come to meetings too, just to make sure that they're bringing the most important things to you, because they're not going to know everything that's happening in the school. So that's kind of how we're thinking right now.
There's no
Any other-
educational credit for
Nope.
this? Okay.
It's like an extracurricular. I'm sure the board will be very excited to write these folks letters of recommendation.
Yes, they would be looking for that. I did talk to, I was at COD last week for an articulation meeting, and one of the counselors there served as a student on the Western Illinois University School Board. And he said it was a fantastic experience, and that there were actually several people who wanted to do that. So we were hoping that, we'll get several people. I know when we talked about this at one of the board meetings, I had a few juniors that were here, and both of them right away were like, because I was looking at them, and they're like, yeah. Especially, I think students who are interested in journalism or government in some way might be very interested in this position. Yeah, or education, yes, yes.
Yeah.
One of the challenges might be for the student, say it's a North student, then realizing that they have a constituency at the other high school and how they get that feedback.
Uh-huh.
So that could be an interesting dynamic.
Yes.
To what I think a good thing for them to have to work through and seek out that input. So, good experience. But, any issues with sitting board member child applying for something like this? We haven't thought about that, have we?
I don't know,
So-
that's called nepotism, isn't
Yeah,
it?
right. I'll make sure it happens after I'm gone.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I was gonna say, I like the petition too, that you guys established.
Yeah.
It looks a lot like how it.
Right.
Anywhere near.
Yeah, mirrors the process pretty closely. Gives them an authentic experience. All right, any
Well-
other questions?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you,
I'm
Janice.
sending
Okay.
Janice home so she can recuperate.
Yes, absolutely, that
Thanks.
frog in your throat. Okay, our next item is the end of the year goal summary, and I believe that's you, Dr.
That
Thiele?
is me. So every year we bring kind of the state of the district report to the board. In the past, this has appeared as kind of a spreadsheet with tasks listed on it. You've seen a similar document for us this year. But what we wanted to produce for the board and then ultimately for the community was a document that was a little more readable like this on each one of the goals. I know you've all had a chance to see this. We've reported out on goal progress all year. I wanted to use this as an opportunity to see if there were any questions that were left unanswered, but also to start the conversation about the next year's goals that we'll start bringing at the beginning of August. We had the board self-evaluation where I heard from board members about what your top concerns were, and I'm working on making sure that our goals for next year reflect those things. And then as we pull this together, we're also looking at how some of these fit into one another, collapsing some of them. There's 9 domains currently, which is a lot of areas to try to address. And because there's so many areas, there's a lot of overlap with some of them. So if you take a look at maybe even like domain 4 is one that we started talking about a lot today. There was a point in time where domain 4, which really looks at technology practices, there was a point in time where it really made a lot of sense to have that one isolated because you're really trying to catch the world up with technology. But now technology is just interfaced with everything we do. So next year when we bring you goals, recommended goals for next year as a starting point, domain 4 will go away because domain 1 will be embedded within domain 1, which is instruction. Because they're not so far apart anymore. Even when you look at our review of domain 4, the last sentence there, our technology, our one-to-one use is seen the greatest use of that is seen in instructional practice, especially when we talk about personalized learning and getting to know students and getting to know, provide feedback to them. That's really all of what Domain 1 is talking about. So you're going to see some of these fold in to one another as we bring you the goals in August. With that being said, that kind of wraps up last year, sets the stage for next year. Are there any outstanding questions around what we accomplished last year?
I like this better than the grid that we had before.
Yeah, that was very confusing, the grid.
I like the narrative.
And as I've said to the board before, I feel like we had a very successful year last year, even though you had a newbie as a superintendent. So I didn't drag you guys down too much.
No.
You learn quickly.
Yes.
I would say it was the opposite.
Thank you.
Did a great job.
Any other questions, or are we good with that?
All right, we're moving on to the discussion of board policy 6.124, as requested by the policy committee. So would the policy committee like to begin the discussion?
Sure. I think we got to give a little bit of a history lesson on this. This discussion came up, Mike, what was it, about a year ago?
Actually, longer ago than that, but
It's
Most recently, when we started reviewing District 99 specific policies.
Yeah. So Mike and I were on the policy committee when this first came up, and we revisited it when the new policy committee met. And what brought this to the first discussion was Mike, I think, Mike's son had a little bit of a different experience at South than what my son had at North over how this was implemented on a daily basis. And so that got Mike and I talking about this, and we looked at the policy, and then now it has come up for review. And in the policy meeting, Hank asked not just Dan and my opinion on this, he wanted to see how the board felt about implementation of this. And so he wanted to hear it from the board, if the board kind of thinks that this is a good policy to have, or if this is something that we should maybe not enforce as well. So that's kind of where this all kind of came about. I think it's to get everybody's, what do they think implementation of the Pledge of Allegiance should be in both schools.
So procedurally, the way that this happens every day is that I'm on the PA, and usually a student speaking on the PA invites everybody to stand and recite the pledge, right? So it's done all together, everybody across the school in the same way. And at that point, some students stand, some students don't, some staff do, some staff don't. I've been in a variety of different classrooms and across the district as it happens. I've never seen anybody disrespectful. I'm not in every classroom, obviously, but I've never seen anybody disrespectfully either way around those who stand and those that don't. But that's, the pledge is said. I believe there's a moment of silence after that, and then we go about the announcements and the rest of the day. So that's how we execute this policy on a daily basis.
I guess I'm confused as to what the differences are in implementation of that.
I think that's implemented equally on both sides of the town.
So my experience was, and it was a bit surprising to me, right, that you'd assume that, and after going through grade school and everything, something all the kids do every morning. And so it didn't even occur to me that wouldn't be the norm in the high school. But the reality is that what I've seen with my personal experience, so I'm not in every classroom either, but with my personal experience was that my children standing for the pledge were actually in the minority. And there had been early on with my son, one of my daughters, there was a situation at least once where, she's standing or not standing because others aren't standing, including the teacher, and feeling awkward about. So especially when you're a freshman, sophomore, the last thing you want to be is be different, And when the majority are not, you're feeling a bit of peer pressure and feeling uncomfortable. And so my opinion about the policy was, when we look at students and staff be encouraged but not required, I would like to make sure that the staff are being encouraged.
Right.
If for no other reason, to especially be mindful and supportive of situations, whether if you've got a majority of kids standing and there's only one or two that are not, making sure that you're being supportive to those students that aren't, and if it's another situation like maybe some of my kids had, that there's some support there, and a recognition of what's going on is all. And I think some of this is, if you ever listen to the video announcements at the schools, you see how I think this is kind of run through and glossed over pretty quick. I don't know, some rooms I think take it a little more seriously than others. There's not a lot of consistency with this. It's my opinion based on anecdotal feedback from other parents and what have you. I can tell you that early on I had to have some discussions with my children about,
Respect.
you stand up because that's what we do, and this is an opportunity, for you to stand up for what you believe in.
Right.
And so I just wonder if the staff are really being encouraged.
Right.
And so that was my bringing this up actually, several years ago with initially, and then bringing it up yet again with Rick and policy. And so I'm glad that we're having the discussion here tonight.
Are you suggesting we change the policy?
I'm not suggesting that we change the policy at all. I'm suggesting that we actually follow the policy.
Right.
Okay.
And my pushback to the policy committee was, I believe we are. And that to do any more than what we do now, which is invite people to stand up and say the pledge, would put us in a very precarious legal position. And if not legal position, would require administratively us to spend a lot of political capital in an area where I don't think the long-term outcome is any difference in performance than what we see now.
So listen, I have, if I was king for a day, maybe I'd make everybody stand for the pledge. That's not my interest here. My interest here is that I had children that felt odd and were feeling pressure to not do it because they were all by themselves. And there was never any discussion with the teacher about any of that. And I just wonder, when we say encourage, shouldn't we be doing something more than just inviting people to stand?
And the reason why we brought it up at this time, we thought we could do the encouraging at the beginning of the school year when everything is a brand-new slate then. So that encouragement could be a statement
Right.
to the staff or a statement to the student body that,
A statement from the board?
well, that's what Hank wants. Hank did not want to do this on his own from the policy committee. So that's why we brought it. That's why we voted on it and chose to bring it up to
Statement
full
from the board
board.
to the teachers? Is that what you're thinking?
Or to Hank.
Or to me, but then any statement to my teachers will be the board, has requested that we will spend this political capital together if we're going to spend it. Because this will, any encouragement to some members of our staff or our student body will not be well received, because there is, I don't know the number, I don't want to quantify it, but there will be staff or student that choose to take the other option, rather not stand, would rather take the other option that we have, which is participate in a non-disruptive, respectful manner. And choosing one of those over the other, encouraging standing or encouraging sitting in a respectful manner, is choosing one side over the other in what has become a very public political debate on how people reflect their beliefs around the country, their religion, their beliefs, their backgrounds. So it will be an expenditure of, and you are really choosing one side over the other. You're encouraging standing over the other option that the policy provides, which is not participating in a non-respectful way.
Gosh.
Or in a respectful way, I'm sorry.
And I personally don't have a problem expending political capital, encouraging people to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I think it's more important than what I'm feeling some people here think it is. I personally, if it was my decision to make, which, you know, it's not my wholly, it'd be my decision, I would strongly encourage staff and students to stand for the pledge.
But Hank, our policy is to encourage participation in the Pledge of Allegiance. Our policy is not to encourage non-participation.
I
Our
understand.
policy is to encourage it and then allow respectful non-participation.
The question is, where is the line there where you're encouraging to the point where you're flipping the other way?
Well, I mean, just a statement from the board just to reinforce that we encourage participation in the Pledge of Allegiance is consistent with the policy. I don't think you're expending a lot of capital there, are you? Just to
With some
reinforce that.
Well,
I'm happy to do it if the board would like me to do it. I'm just not saying that it's something that I would pick out of the hat to go do on my own.
Well,
I get it.
so I would like to see
I'm
the
happy to
encouragement.
serve at the Pledge
And then I
of
also would like to, I would also like to see, you know, just some awareness, because what's interesting to me is that, you know, we go through here and make a point that, hey, listen, no one's being required to do it, and everybody has to be respectful of each other's position on this. But the whole thing is almost, to me, this is all predicated on the idea that actually the majority are saying the pledge, and the minority is not.
Well, it says that they'll all be encouraged. It doesn't say that they will
Right.
participate.
So those individuals who decline to participate must do so in a non-disruptive, respectful manner. You know, I mean, it works both ways. And we don't go through and say that, we don't make a point that the people who are standing, make sure that they need to be respectful and be respectful of the people that are sitting.
Well, I
You know.
think I would push back that we expect everybody to be respectful.
Well, I know we
of one
do.
another in our classrooms.
I'm just saying that the policy is
Whether
written
it's the
from a...
pledge or it's anything else, we would expect that our staff and students are respectful of one another.
I think our students and staff should be encouraged to participate, and I think all should be aware that it is an important moment of the day for some people, and that it's not a time for other people to be talking or doing anything else while that's going on. That's,
I would say as long as it's non-disruptive or respectful, it meets the qualifications of the policy.
who's deciding what's respectful, and what's
The teacher who's running that instructional space.
what's disruptive and what's not
The
disruptive,
teacher who's in charge of that instructional space would determine that.
which is appropriate. I just, right now, this has all been a hands-off thing. I get it, because it's a powder keg.
It is a powder keg.
gosh.
It's something that I feel strongly about. So, and so much so that, my son actually wrote an article on this for the student newspaper. And he found when writing the article that he was definitely in the minority. And he took a little heat.
Let me
Two.
do a quick straw poll of how many board members would like for me to find a way to encourage our staff and students greater than what we do now to participate in the Pledge of Allegiance.
What do you do now?
We invite everybody each day to stand.
Okay.
And join
But
the Pledge of Allegiance.
okay.
And that's all that's
That's
said?
That's all that's
That's
said,
that's the encouragement,
Mhm.
is just the invitation.
is the invitation to stand and to join into the Pledge of Allegiance.
I guess I'd like to know what Rick and Mike want. Do you want a statement from the board that gets conveyed to Hank, that gets conveyed to the teachers? Is that what you're asking?
Or just a
What do you
simple, on the
want- what
first
do you
day of
want in the form
school,
of
say,
encouragement?
maybe just a reminder why we do this on the first day of school, saying, here's why we do this every day, or here's the policy, or just some type of, it seems to me, I've asked my son's friends, and at North, it's the exact opposite, where way more majority is standing and doing the pledge, going through the.
But we're also, this is a very unscientific
It is.
study.
Well, that's where this,
It's,
that's, I want to give you the history where this conversation started in the policy
Yeah.
committee. And so,
This is a very small student sample experience.
and so then the policy committee changed, and so with Dan aboard, that was a different perspective, and so we discussed this in our last meeting. And I'm of the belief, I can't see any harm in saying a statement at the beginning of the year that we encourage this, and on the first day, and that's it. And then everything else the same. I'm not saying a 5-minute video every day, but maybe at the beginning of the year, if not to the students, maybe to the staff, and
Right.
say, hey, this is one policy of the school district, and we want.
That's initially what I was asking for, was that before school starts in the summer, when the teachers are all coming together, that there be something said to the teachers reminding them of this encouragement, and asking them to just be aware that there are students who feel strongly about this, and that we need to make sure that this policy is being followed. I'm not asking to change the policy.
No.
I'm not asking to get
No word change.
any more proactive than that, but to me, right now, just an invitation every morning is not the encouragement that I think that this policy was written to create.
Well, for me, this breaks my heart that we're even having to discuss this. I feel that everyone in this country needs to honor this country, because there's a lot of people who died to make this country what it is, and to not pay respects to that breaks my heart.
We see it on the TV.
And I know,
Well-
it's where it has gone.
But this country's great because people have the opportunity not to do that.
Yes, I understand
Still
that.
breaks my heart.
I don't disagree with you, but that's what makes our country great,
I know.
Terry.
I understand that, but I don't see a problem with saying something at the beginning of the school year to our students also, that this is
Hank,
an
rather than
important
take a
thing.
straw poll, I'd rather like to see what the recommendation is, and then I could vote on that.
Well,
I mean, I'm hearing ideas, but I mean,
well, administratively, we will carry it out. I mean, if this is what the board wants us to do, administratively, we'll carry it out. But this was not an area where I was going to dedicate administrative resources. If the board,
I don't think we need resources. I just think, just a simple statement.
That's
that-
what I think, a
that
simple
says-
statement.
That says, this is, you don't have to do this, but that it respects this country to do this. I mean, it's just a simple,
heard and understood, we'll move forward.
am I on the right page?
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. We'll figure it out as to how we'll address it with our staff to start the school year.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, you don't have to decide.
I mean, so,
All right.
anyway, freedom of information requests.
None received this month.
Okay, all right. All right, moving right along to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to pull off to discuss or vote on separately? All right.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented, which includes A, personnel report, appointment certified, appointment classified, transfer of position classified, personnel, B, personnel report, retirement administration, C, financial pages, D, closed session minutes and verbatim recordings, E, deletion of board policies 7.55, 8.40, 7.38, and 4.171, and F, student tour.
All right,
I second the motion.
Dan seconds.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Dan Nicholas.
Aye.
Rick Pavanato.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller.
Aye.
And Terry Pavasich.
Aye. All right, thank you, motion carries. We'll move on to recommendations for action. Course name change.
We mentioned this earlier, but Gina, I'll have you just give the quick overview of that.
Two of our courses, Computer Science 1 and Computer Science 2, are no longer eligible to use CT grant funds. We receive 2 CT grants that we have used that funding to support our Computer Science 1 and 2 classes. We were notified of that a few months ago, and in working with the representatives from the state and from DEOS, we determined that if the courses were computer programming courses, we could use those grant funds. Well, the courses are computer programming courses, but we call them Computer Science 1 and Computer Science 2. So we are recommending that we change the name effective for pretty much immediately, because we need to start using the funding, to Computer Programming 1, Mobile App Development, and Computer Programming 2, Mobile App Development. The main reason is obviously because of the grant funding, but honestly, I think this is a good move in general, because it is more truth in packaging. This is what our students are learning. I think it'll make students more aware of that, parents more aware of that, so I think it's a good move.
Do we have a motion to,
I'll make a motion to approve the course name changes as presented.
Second.
second? Okay, Rick and Mike? Okay.
Rick Pavanato.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller.
Aye.
Dan Nicholas.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
And Terry Pavasich.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, approval of the textbooks for 17-18 school year. I believe that would be you too,
This is
Gina.
as well.
Yes. We have 2 textbooks that the board approved to go on exhibit. They were on exhibit from May 24th to July 12th. No one reviewed the textbooks or wrote any comments about the textbooks, raised any questions. So we are recommending we approve these 2 textbooks for our new personal trainer certification course.
I move we approve the textbooks as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. Opposite Mike and Rick.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Rick Pavanato.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller.
Aye.
Dan Nicholas.
Aye.
And Terry Pavasich.
Aye. Motion carries. Intergovernmental agreement between Lyle District 202 and District 99 for District 99 to provide special education services to District 202 students. And I believe that would be Scott.
It's Scott with a assist from Mark.
Okay?
Yeah, we had an opportunity where the Lyle School District reached out to us to see if a student of theirs would be appropriate for our T99 program and if we would provide services. And we had our staff kind of work with their staff, and we kind of all worked together, and we said, yeah, this would be an opportunity that we think we could service that student. And so that's what this agreement is about. Yeah, so we're just excited about the opportunity to support District 202.
Yeah, and it's a good thing, because we don't really need to add staff, so it's really in the government agreement. Besides the law that we would use, and already figured out what the tuition cost would be, which was roughly $30,000, and they would provide any additional services, transportation, things like that. So it would be just to help us support the program. So it'd be good.
This kind of gets our feet wet a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good opportunity for us to, I mean, we have obviously this, the space. I know Lyle's, I think this reaching out to us is a nice thing. And maybe there'll be future students that they want to, have us look at to support, so that'd be a great thing. So.
It also reinforces the good reputation that program has developed over the years.
Oh,
That the staff
absolutely.
there have really, the teachers and staff and support staff have built a strong reputation in the community for what they do.
Yes. Okay. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I move for the Board of Education to approve the intergovernmental agreement between Lyle District 202 and District 99 to provide special education services to District 202 students.
A second.
All right.
Thank you. Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller?
Aye.
Rick Pavanato?
Aye.
Don Renner?
Aye.
And Terry Kavasich?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, a resolution to approve the salary for the superintendent for the 17-18 school year.
That's yours, Madam President.
Oh, it is. Well, I didn't realize I was, okay. I believe that is on our agenda. All right. Is
How about
everybody-
I'll make a motion, and if there needs to be discussion there, can after a second. Motion for that we approve the resolution to approve the salary for the superintendent for the 2017-18 school year.
Second.
I don't believe there's any discussion.
Well, discussion on just to explain to the public that Dr. Thiele's under a 3-year contract, and the second year and third year of his contract was to be negotiated after the first year expiration. So this is just part of our process and procedure of setting his salary for his second year. And I think it reflects the general understanding and appreciation of Dr. Thiele's performance in his first year. I think he did an excellent job, and I think he's well deserving of this increase to his salary.
Thank you, Don. Any other comment? Okay.
Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller?
Aye.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Rick Pavanato?
Aye.
Don Renner?
Aye.
And Terry Kavasich?
Aye. Motion carries. We move on. Congratulations. All right. Old business, we have our policy committee report, second reading. Would the policy committee like to take this one?
Yeah, these were up for second reading, and so tonight, if we have a motion and we move on it, they were pretty much straightforward edits or some minor changes from press. So,
I've received no questions from any board members since the first reading.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the policies as presented.
okay, I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you. Cheryl Fuller?
Aye.
Rick Pavanato?
Aye.
Don Renner?
Aye.
Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
And Terry Kavasich?
Aye. Motion carries. We'll move on to new business. Is there any new business? Okay, moving on to the reception of visitors. This is a portion for anyone to ask questions or whatever about anything in the district. And I see none, so I'm going to move on. All right, communications and announcements. Do we have anything from Len?
We have not met since our last meeting, so I have nothing to report.
Okay, all right. Sasset?
That's Nancy.
That's Nancy. There is nothing. The Education Foundation, I'm going to pass on that one for right now. We do have a date, I believe, for Pizza Wars next year.
I'd have to look that up.
Remember what it is?
It's
It's in March, right?
it's in March. It's the first. Isn't it?
You give me a second, I'll find it.
Okay.
Go on, I'll report back in a second.
Okay, we'll follow that up. The IASB.
Triple I's in November the 17th through the 19th, and if you haven't already, let Julie know whether or not you're going, and please do so.
Just a quick question on that.
Sure.
Is that something that the board generally participates in?
Yes, actually, we've been really great about that, and it's a great learning opportunity, and is at the workshops as well as getting to learn a little bit more about each other and interactions with other board members in those workshops and outside those workshops is kind of a beneficial time. So this board's been very good at doing that. Not all boards are. So
We encourage everyone to participate, and this year, our district is presenting, and.
Two sessions. I
Two
think.
sessions.
Yeah.
So,
Three, I
you know,
think.
to give support to those folks who are going to be presenting is always a good thing, too.
Thank you.
And to meet people from other districts is really, that's where I find I've learned a lot from that, so it's always a good thing.
it's kind of you get a chance to kind of compare what we're doing as compared against other districts, what they're doing, and some respects it's helped me appreciate more how great we're doing things here, because there were times early on my first couple of years going down that a lot of things happening with Common Core and finding out that we were sometimes 1, 2, 3 years ahead of where other districts were on things, and so we're really tradition of being kind of proactive out in front of these changes and how to deal with them, and then people end up coming to us as a resource, asking, hey, how are you guys doing that over there at District 99? So that's been part of my experience as well. And for the past 3 or 4 years, I've stayed over for the Sunday morning session too. I'm not going to this year, but my experience with that has always been that's the best. That Sunday morning keynote was actually the best of all of them, but you've got like 20% of the people still there. So it's worth staying over for or coming back downtown if you've got the time to do that. Yep.
Pizza Wars is Thursday, March 1st at 6:30 p.m. in the DGS cafeteria. Get there early because it's packed out.
Yes,
Well,
lines
and
out the
there's going
door.
to be a restriction on the number of tickets sold, too, this year.
Is it March 1st?
March
March
1st, 6:30 p.m. at DGS.
So buy your tickets early. All right.
Upcoming board meetings?
Okay. Upcoming meetings, we have August 7th is a special workshop to go over to the budget.
And
And
then just
at
regular
7
workshop.
o'clock. And then August 21st will be our regular business meeting.
What was that? A correction on the 7th? What did you say?
The 7th, we'll have the action item for the budget approval, but then
Right.
it will be followed by a regular.
Got it.
You don't just get that
Workshop.
one item on that night. You get a regular workshop following.
It'll be a full night
It will be.
of excitement.
It will be.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything that you guys signed up for and more.
Yes.
Oh, joy.
Yeah, what's going on with these 2-hour summer board meetings? Thought it was supposed to be an easy board meeting.
That's
I
right.
didn't want you guys to have to leave and it'd still be sunlight out.
Oh, okay.
That
Yeah.
would throw off, your
Whole internal
circadian
calendar.
rhythms.
Okay, does anybody have anything else to bring before the board? All right, do I have a motion?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Thank you. A second?
I second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Have a nice evening, folks.